everyone. Welcome to our online hangout space. Hashtag chat up, real talk, real impact. Brought to you by Quarant Talk Media and supported by the United States Embassy in the Philippines. I'm your host, Jermaine Halandoni de Luna, and as usual, here on Chat Up, we bring you conversations on current affairs and various advocacies. Join our chat, keep your messages and questions coming, and share this live stream using our official hashtags. Hashtag chat up and hashtag real talk, real impact. Let's now dive into today's discussion and find out what's up. The United Nations declared March 3rd as World Wildlife Day. It is a day to raise awareness on the rich biodiversity of our planet. This year's theme, Recovering Key Species for Ecosystem Restoration, emphasizes the need to conserve the most endangered plant and animal species and discuss conservation solutions. Reading from wildlifeday.org, according to data from the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, over 8,400 species of wild fauna and flora are critically endangered, while close to 30,000 more are understood to be endangered or vulnerable. And based on these estimates, it is suggested that over 1 million species are threatened with extinction. As we all know, we human beings are a part of a vast ecosystem, and we rely on nature for livelihood, food, and many of our basic necessities. As we face critical times for our environment, we join everyone to learn more about what we can do to protect nature and our future. So today here on Chat Up, we'll talk more about that together with some of our environment activists, scientists, and young leaders of our generation. So tune in and keep your comments and questions coming to join the conversation. For today, we have with us the Ecosystem Management Specialist 2 of the Protected Area Management Office of the Ala Valley Watershed Forest Reserve under DENR Penrose, South Cotabato. There, he provides technical and scientific expertise in the office's programs, activities, and projects. He also holds a master's degree in wildlife studies in the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, where he worked on the amphibians and reptiles of Mount Busa. He was a volunteer for the official youth coordination platform to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity. And in 2016, he was selected as a Y. Seeley Academic Fellow on Environmental Issues in Hawaii. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Kier Mitchell Pitogo.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, Kier. Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
And next,
Thank you for the invitation.
all right. And next, we have a conservation photographer, environmental storyteller, and engineer. His work focuses on stories on the climate crisis, endangered wildlife, and the intersectionality of culture and the environment. He is a National Geographic Explorer, Nikon Asia Ambassador, and an emerging League Fellow in the International League of Conservation Photographers, and has published stories on various international platforms. He was also honored in the first under 30 Asia list and is the youngest board of trustee for the WWF Philippines, working on environmental conservation efforts in the Philippines. Joining us this afternoon is Gab Mejia. Hi, Gab.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. It's nice to see you, Kier.
All right. Our next guest is a biologist who studies the Irrawaddy dolphins and Philippine butterflies and co-facilitate workshops on planning and management of marine protected areas and forest watershed reserves. She was also recognized as one of the EE 30 under 30 by the North American Association for Environmental Education class of 2021. She also received training as an early career conservationist in Chester Zoo in the UK and was also selected as a Y. Seeley Academic Fellow in Hawaii, USA. Let's all welcome Kim Casipe. Hi, Kim. Thanks for joining us. And completing our lineup of guests is the Southeast Asia representative of the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, She is also the founder of the enterprise Tagpi, supporting the livelihood of coastal communities. Joining us is MJ Lamoste. Hi, MJ. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show, everyone, and thank you for joining us this beautiful Monday afternoon. All right, I think Kim is just having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we hope she can join us in a while. All right, so how are you guys? How are you this Monday afternoon? I hope you guys are doing okay. Okay, so let's start with our discussion for this afternoon. You guys know you all have a strong background in science, specifically biology and nature conservation. And now, no, we all know that we are in a crucial time to address issues in climate change and the environment, considering the recent report of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. How would you explain this to people in the simplest and most understandable term that we need to protect biodiversity and why should people care? Medyo loaded yung question. So how do you explain this sa isang tao na hindi ganun ka-aware sa issues of climate change and biodiversity? Why do we need to protect the environment? I'll start with Gab.
Yeah, I think the easiest way whenever I explain it to youth or kids is really that biodiversity is literally everything, even like the clothes that you wear, the food that you eat, that's all biodiversity because that's where it comes from. All our ecosystems that provide for many livelihoods, even our jobs can be attributed or correlated to the existence and importance of biodiversity. So I think that's what I say in even through photography, that's usually what as a photographer, that's what we want to depict, the different realities and dependence of livelihoods, the cultures that are intertwined with biodiversity.
Right. So basically the intersectionality of things, no, that we depend on the environment, so we really have to take care of it. How about care? How do you explain this, the need to conserve, to protect the environment?
So biodiversity, it's mostly like not a familiar term with a lot of people, especially about the public. And we always tell people that biodiversity is literally the web of life. Like cut one thread and you risk unraveling it all. So everyone is interconnected. Everything is connected to everything else, and it may not be very direct, the impact of biodiversity loss to humans, but eventually we can feel it. And people, there are a lot of examples of this, such as the effects of typhoons and other like natural disasters. So everything is connected. So we really should care for our biodiversity and protect it at all costs.
All right. Thank you, Care. How about Kim? Is Kim with us already? Kim? Yes, go ahead. All right. Medyo may technical difficulties pa rin, I think, with Kim. Let's ask MJ. MJ, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can
Go
hear
ahead.
you well. So the way I would explain this to people, especially maybe to the women I work with, is basically environment or biodiversity is our home, and then if one gets threatened, it affects everyone else. It affects your livelihood. It affects your surroundings. So basically, we need to, the connection of like look after each.
All right. So everything is interconnected. You depend on the environment, so you really have to
Yeah.
take care of it. Take care of it because you get your food there, your livelihood from the environment, and it's a really a need to take care of it. All right. So my next question would be: you have been exposed, diba, in different programs and projects within and outside the Philippines, and you have seen various approaches and programs in taking care and conserving biodiversity, rather. How would you describe the Philippines' situation and capability and capacity with regard to the well-being and status of our flora and fauna? How do we fare with other programs outside the country? Care?
So Philippines, for the information of everyone, and I think we've heard it at school, it's a mega biodiverse country, and it is a biodiversity hotspot, meaning that the endemism is high, meaning that more species can only be found here, but it's threatened by human habitation or by many anthropogenic activities. So those like designations alone would tell you that Philippines is really, really rich in biodiversity. Unfortunately, there is although there are like programs, and there are people who study this biodiversity, but it's not enough. We need more people to be in the field. Like as a wildlife biologist, we need more people to do the science, to generate knowledge, so that we could inform the public about how rich this biodiversity is and how threatened it is. So when it comes to really the capacity, we do have the capacity, but we lack people, and of course the opportunities and the resources. Considering that the Philippines biodiversity is really high, we are lacking in manpower and resources. So that's what I can tell as a wildlife biologist here in the Philippines.
Thanks for that, Kier. I'll get back to that answer, yung we lack manpower. I think it's a very loaded question. But Kier, for the benefit of our viewers, what do you mean by anthropogenic? Anong ibig sabihin nun? No, anthropogenic activities.
Anthropogenic activities like human caused activities, so caused by humans.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Kier. Gab, how would you describe the Philippine situation with regard to the well-being and status of our flora and fauna?
Yeah, I'd like to echo actually what Kier was saying. We lack a lot of enforcement. I think that's one of the
Right.
main lack that we have. We have about like 14% protected areas through the NIPAS Act here in the Philippines, and that's still a little, but because there's a lot of fraught conflict with what Kier was saying about anthropogenic threats like deforestation, mining, or very
Right.
socioeconomic activities. It's hindering the development and progress to protect more ecosystems or protect the flora and fauna that we have. But we have good laws, we have important laws, and we just really need the enforcement, and also of
Yeah.
course the awareness of people. The Filipinos should know or be aware about the how mega biodiverse a country we have, and we should take pride in that. We have symbols like the Philippine eagle, a global symbol. We have even the tamaraw, which was also in the previous 1 peso coin. So it's supposed to be important, and it shouldn't just be appreciated, but really put
Right.
value into it. I think that needs to progress.
Thanks, Gab. It's a really good point. Hindi lang siya dapat to be appreciated, but you have to be part of taking care of that. It's everywhere. You can see it in our money, and yet it seems that there's a disconnect. How can we really empower more people to take care of our environment? I'll park that question later. No, how about Kim? Kim, can you hear us, or may technical difficult? I think we're still having a little bit of technical difficulties. Kay Kim, MJ, same question. How would you describe the Philippine situation and our capability with regard to taking care of the well-being of our flora and fauna?
I think for the past few years, there has been a lot of, organization raising awareness, doing something for the environment, like to name a few, Talarak Foundation is doing of protection in the endemic species in Negros Occidental, and then like Gab is doing a lot of things as well with the tamaraws. So you can see that despite like all the lack of participation and the lack of awareness with the community, something is changing every year. So the more we speak, the more people we will see that our voices will be heard.
All right, thank you so much, MJ. Thanks for that. Kim is joining us via phone patch. Hi, Kim. Can you hear us?
Yes,
All
am
right.
I audible naman?
Okay.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can hear you
Sorry, my
clearly.
internet is really bad at
It's
the moment.
fine. It's fine. So same question. I'll repeat the question for you. You and all of our guests here, you've been exposed to many projects within and outside the Philippines. You've seen various programs and approaches in taking care of environment and biodiversity. How would you describe the Philippine situation and capability with regard to the well-being and status of our flora and fauna?
based on my experience for a lot of communities, especially those living in with direct connection with nature, for example, for coastal communities or communities living in the upland, I think most of they're not aware of how rich we are as a country, and sometimes there's a question in their minds that a lot of people would say we are rich, but then they still would experience a lot of adversities on a daily basis. So in general, there's still a bit of underappreciation, and there's a lot of gaps with communicating. But social media is helping a lot, raising awareness for our communities. But there's really such a big gap in
Right,
terms
right.
of having a bit of appreciation. Like for example, for communities at the coast, a lot of kids are afraid of the water, and they don't have direct, they don't have a intimate experience with the water. They don't know what kind of corals they have there, how beautiful the fishes are there in their area.
Okay, that's a very interesting point, Kim. No, you live in a coastal area, and yet the kids there are not aware and cannot really appreciate the value of the water and the corals and natural resources they have there. So I'll get back to my question earlier. Our guest here said that we lack manpower and lack enforcement of our laws. We have great laws. Actually, the Philippines has one of the best laws in terms of taking care of the environment, our biodiversity. And yet, we see a lot of struggles being faced by our environmental activists and people who protect the environment. And it seems that there's still continued um, um, issues, no, on the our conservation issues here in the Philippines. So why do you think that we lack the manpower, and why does it seem to be a disconnect in taking care of our environment and the laws that we have, and how to communicate it with the public? I know it's a very loaded question. I hope we can answer this succinctly by our guest. I'll start with Kier.
I think that the lack of manpower stems from the lack of opportunities for wildlife biologists and related fields. This probably would tell you how underappreciated, just like what Kim said, this profession is in the Philippines. So if there is less opportunities, then there are less people who work on biodiversity, and it's unfortunate, and that's where the disconnect comes in, because we have a really high biodiversity and we need more people to generate the science needed to inform policies, to inform decisions, and yes, I think that's one main reason there's really less opportunities for
Right.
biologists here in the country.
Right. So we really need to show people, the government importance, no, of biologists that will take care and assess our environment. How about Gab? Why do you think we lack manpower and enforcement?
Well, it's really, the lack of financial investments and financing also that we have to take in consideration. As Kier mentioned, people lack the opportunities to experience nature or to have a sustainable livelihood. As a biologist, people have to work extra hard or go international to develop. And this is because we lack a central system in uh, managing our environmental resources and our biodiversity. We have different parks,
Right.
different degrees of management. So, for example, like even as simple as the Pasig River, right? It's just one river, and yet it's separated into different municipalities with different laws, like local laws, but it's just one interconnected. And you can see through that, like if we be able to manage and as well, have a smart sense of governance
Right.
in
Right.
the ecosystems or the habitats where these biodiversity lives, then I guess there would be help. And I also like to focus on the lack of education. Um, we only the biodiversity that we learn in school are just like Africans or lions, something that we don't usually find. We don't even find in the Philippines, right? We don't learn about the Philippine eagle or other
Right.
environmental. You have to specifically take that initiative to go into that. But what if there's like a mandate that in the curriculum, the educational curriculum of schools is that people would have the opportunity to immerse themselves at a very young age, because it also
Right.
always, I believe, it also starts there, that level-headed awareness early on, and nurturing that kind of education and growth
Yeah,
for the
definitely start.
love for
Yeah.
the environment.
starting them young, like you guys, no, young people taking care of the environment and at the forefront of taking care of the environment and informing people of the rich biodiversity of our country. Kim, um, I know you've mentioned this a while ago, but why do you think we lack manpower? And it seems na may disconnect nga sa manpower natin and the enforcement of laws in taking care of the environment.
The things that Gab and Kier really resonated with me, with the education, with the government having no investment for people in this kind of career track. I think it starts with education, because most of the people I know doing something about the environment or in the career of conservation and environmental protection, they have some sort of experience or encounter with the environment directly that has affected them, and that became a turning point or a shift in their perspective, in their love for the environment and their care for the environment. So it's really, we in our curriculum, it's not in the local context, it's not locally relevant. They don't really find the connection with knowing the tigers and giraffes and lions, because we don't have it here. But I guess it's really in the systems, the education system that we have to have materials that are locally relevant, that people and kids can see and have a direct experience in their backyard or in their adjacent communities. So it's the lack of education, but also investment from the government. And not only the government, it's really, environment is really not a priority for, majority of the country. There's just very little population or little like local government units that focuses on environmental protection and really investing in the people and their local resource managers that are leading the management of the different areas, maybe in the water, maybe in the marine areas or freshwater ecosystems, or even in the uplands. So we still have that sense of, the environment is still not a priority for many reasons, and for reasons that I would not really say, but there's just this big gap that we have now, and it would take us to move beyond that boundary to be able to really have the environment a priority for the majority of the Filipinos.
Thanks for that, Kim. It's a sad reality, but you guys are doing something about it, and this kinds of shows, to mainstream inform people the need to take care of the environment. How about MJ?
To add with what they say of, what's the disconnect, I think, as Kim said, it's the lack of education, but I think to highlight, it's the lack of exposure. So even if it's a true scenario that even if we have a degree as marine bio or a biologist, we were not really as exposed to different like issues. Some are just based in the lab, or some are just, they just take the course and decided they won't pursue because there's no opportunity. So if there would be, more opportunities, like volunteering opportunities connected to the school curriculum, I think it will be really good. Like, for example, in my experience when I was in university, I didn't have any internship. So I did a thesis, but I think it's really different when you immerse with, because through immersion, you get to see more things. And by seeing more things, you get, curious to learn more about like certain issues in relation to the ocean.
Thank you so much, MJ. Great points, everyone. You really need education and immersion, for you to really understand what is going on the ground. And of course, we need good governance. And I know we really need to prioritize laws that take care of the environment. And of course, ayusin, magkaroon ng one database or one governing body to take care of everything. I think our guests can agree to that. All right. When we talk about, next question for everyone, when we talk about conservation of our biodiversity, specifically, and especially yung ating critically endangered species, what exactly do we mean by conservation? What measures and solutions are available? I'll start with Kim.
I would always, when I do conservation education talks, to always, I would always say that conservation is really people work. It's beyond wildlife. Maybe more than 50% or 60% or 80% of what you talk about is about people managing the resources. So for me, conservation, it's not just about not using up the resources, but it's such a way that you allow people to see that they are part of what they're conserving, that if they are conserving this particular species or this critically endangered or endangered species, they're actually saving the habitat where they would also have a lot of ecosystem services, the benefits that they can find in the ecosystem. So conservation, it's a term that we use when we think about saving an animal or um, allowing animal to repopulate and increase their population, but it's really more of um, conserving the habitat as a whole because of the interconnectedness and how connected this individual species as a community, as an ecosystem to each other, and people living in the community as a part of this system. So humans are not really apart from nature. We are part of it. And whatever we do with the critically endangered or animals that we are trying to save, we're actually being impacted in one way or another because we share the same space and we coexist with them. So really conservation is more than managing the animals or trying to work to increase their population. It's really managing people's perspectives and people's priorities in protecting the space where they would live. So that for me is what conservation is about in relation to this critically endangered species that we are trying to protect.
Thank you so much, Kim, for that. How about Gab?
Yeah, that's super true. I super agree with Kim on, conservation is about people. It's about protecting the people who, like environmental defenders, environmental rangers, environmental activists, even protecting the livelihoods of local communities, making sure that they are able to receive the necessary
Mm-mm.
things that they need through their day to day and even the future. And I always say that conservation is a long term plan. It's not something that, hey, we're just going to conserve this certain species at certain time frame, but it's really about why are we conserving it in the first place? Is this being communicated well to the local communities? Is this being communicated well in an inclusive way? Because I think there's also a problem with conservation because it actually stems from a very very post-colonial colonial understanding, right?
Right.
Conservation was used as a kind of fascist movement by the Western world in order to to push away lands and
Mm-mm.
own lands, to
Right.
acquire land, right?
Right.
And to like remove indigenous communities. So conservation is really about an inclusive system that protects the resources that we have, that we are inheriting, and all the future generations are inheriting. And there are so many solutions actually being shown and
Mm-mm.
depicted by a lot of environmental organizations out there, and it's something and there's also a lot of take in how we can see solutions in the past, right? Learning about the cultures of indigenous communities and traditional knowledge where they have coexisted with a certain ecosystem already for centuries and decades, and we just need to, I think, really learn from that kind of way of living as well and
Mm-mm.
apply it to the way we develop in the future. Because at the end of the day, if you're like protecting a certain land or a certain species at the expense of the livelihoods of communities, that's not conservation. That's just fascism,
Exactly.
illusion as conservation.
Exactly. That's the what people are saying. Development aggression. Uh, development in the guise no of taking away land, land grabbing, and definitely we really need conservation to be an inclusive concept as well. Thank you so much for that, Gab. How about care?
So I think they've elaborated well, no, when they talk about conservation. Yeah, it is also my view that when we talk about conservation, it's more on human behavior and less on nature. So I'm speaking from the perspective of a scientist. So maybe a lot would think that when we say conservation, it's only the sciences, but it's not. It's a multi-disciplinary approach, and for the primary players here include scientific communication, arts like photography, like what Gab's doing. No, it's more on really managing people's values towards nature and value orientations, because they're the managers.
Right.
And that's what I want to highlight. That's why I always highlight when we talk about conservation, we always include the people, the local managers of biodiversity, the indigenous peoples and local communities who are on the ground, who are actually the one managing their resources. So scientists, we only are a part of that very big process, the conservation process. So we just generate knowledge, but if that knowledge is not utilized or apply for the benefit of nature and people, then it's not conservation. So yeah, it's very inclusive, and it's more on managing people's behavior.
Thanks for that, Kier. Managing people's behavior, and also good science communication, how to translate those data into action, and how to take care of the environment, and of course, the people living there, and especially our indigenous communities. How
Yes,
about MJ? MJ, I think you're on mute.
Most the three of them already share what is conservation in general, and like what, what goes in conservation. So probably I will add more into like innovation in conservation. So I think it's something really useful on how we are conserving our environment in a way that people, even if they are not scientists, they are still, experiencing the feels of how to be in the field. Like for example, using Gab is using a lot of photography. Kim is doing a lot of, how do you say, education, like environmental education. Here is exposing, like how do you say, exposing species in the Mount Busa, which we will never see that. By using innovation like cameras, we will be able to access them, and then by also having those like photographs, or having those innovative methods, we will able to have, that's also less manpower, I would say, because like it's there's more access to it. So the future of conservation, basically at this point, even in like under the water, you can already do research by just having a camera. You don't need like 10 people underwater, because who knows, might be, instead of saving the coral reef, you end up like crushing them because you're not well trained enough. So by using innovation, like less manpower, less time, but accurate. I'm not sure about the accuracy, but we always working on improving innovative solutions.
All right, thank you so much, MJ. It's very important to use innovative solutions, not to take care of our environment and find ways to conserve our rich biodiversity of our country. So now, I know our audience are very curious about to know more about your story. So, as young individuals, I'm very curious to know what made you become an environment activist, and what is your vision for the environment. I'll start with Kim.
Interesting naman sa akin kasi before, my reason for going to this path, part this career, is really wanting people to see how I see nature, how I love nature, and how I enjoy teaching them or showing them the beauty of different kinds of life in different forms, in different colors, in different sizes and shapes, and how important each, even the tiny, organism that we see has a value, and it's very crucial for all kinds of life in the planet. So that's where my hugot would come from, with my environmental activism. And it's really the exposure, as she mentioned before, that was really my turning point, because when I was in college, you would have a lot of exposure trips, and even time to really get to know different community members, the barangays, different mga tanods that would, and mountain rangers, forest rangers. So the kind of exposure, um, encountering different kinds of people that has direct connection with the environment, that really stays in natural spaces on a daily basis. So that's the turning point for me. And seeing how beautiful life is, it's just, I know it's very cliche, but that's where that really pushed me. I saw the environment and how important each life is, and that is my that's the turning point for my life. And I've always been exposed because my parents will live in near freshwater streams and the mountainous area in my province. So as a young girl, I would always be exposed to nature, and being curious about what I see that's moving, even the tiniest things. And I would pause and see all these life forms moving, and it would make me understand that I'm not the only, living creature that's living on the planet. I have a
Right.
lot of things how maybe also lives, and we coexist together. we can live harmoniously. So that's that kind of perspective really pushed me. I want people to see. I know it's very imposed, but it's my desire for people to see that we're not the only ones dominating the planet. We have a lot of, we coexist with many life forms, and each and everyone has some role in that, gives us this ecosystem security and integrity that allows us to survive as, creatures of the planet. Yun.
Thanks for that, Kim. Yung hugot na yon, that's very beautiful, no? You value every life form in the world, no? Hindi lang tayo yung nag-iisang life form dito, and we have to be stewards of the environment and take care of them. Thank you for that, Kim. How about Kier? What's your turning point, and what's your hugot naman, and what made you become an environment activist?
Actually, my love for environment, for biodiversity started very early. Like I grew up by the bay, and I grew up watching a lot of wildlife themed documentaries. And here in General Santos, we are surrounded by mountains, and one of that is the Busa Mountain Range. But I grew up frustrated because there's really less like materials, about our local biodiversity. So I think that experience has really influenced the way I view nature, and of course influenced my decisions. Like growing up, I took up marine biology, and then for my master's I took up wildlife studies. So that frustration really translated into the person that I am today, because I really want for people, to see how beautiful our biodiversity is. What are the wildlife species in our country, and especially here in southern Mindanao, where there is very much less research being conducted. And I know that for the past few years, southern Mindanao has been, I mean, there's stigma, but then I wanted to show that there's more, not only cultural but biological diversity in this region. So, when part of what I'm doing now is I generate knowledge, like I do scientific research, just to show to people how diverse the wildlife species are in this region. So yeah, because we always say that it's really hard to protect something, and we cannot protect something that we do not know. So one step for that is to really understand what's in the forest, what's in the what are the wildlife species in the oceans, before we can really appreciate them, before we can protect them. So that really pushed me to pursue this career as a wildlife biologist.
Thanks, Kier. So really the exposure, no? Once you get to really know the environment, you learn how to take care of it, and you do more to take care of the things that you love, which is the environment. Thank you so much for that. How about MJ? What made you become an environment activist?
Okay. Yeah, maybe I will provide because it's a really, it's a big discussion to explain if I wanna discuss everything, but maybe I will give two exposure that led me to be an environment activist. So I started my career doing volunteer works for a nonprofit organization called Lamave, Large Marine Vertebrates, and basically I was exposed to a fishery of manta ray in the Bohol Sea, and then basically that's the first time I've seen it as well, and I don't remember it being discussed in the school. So by just looking at it, I saw that how dependent the community towards the animals, and then later, like towards the project, I realized they are way more valuable if they are alive. But that's not how the system works in that community. But then learning from that, I was moved to another island as well, doing turtle conservation, in which it's the total opposite of what I've seen. So we were dealing like interaction in the wild with the sea turtles, and then I can see that the community are really valuing them, like this is their source of income. But despite that source of income, you can see a lot of inequalities, especially for the women. They are facing a lot of inequality. So I think that's the point. I really want to do something not just for the environment, also for like not just for the marine environment, but also for the women and the resources, like introducing circular fashion as well as a main source of livelihood for the women who are having facing inequalities in an area where there is a biodiverse source of like how do you say marine resources. And how do you say, like a source of livelihood, which is tourism. So until this day, I think my vision is to hopefully empower more coastal communities, especially women, because as we know, women, they are the caretaker of the household. So the more they are aware that, okay, if we take care of the ocean, if we know what's in the ocean, maybe my future kids will also see it, and my husband will listen, like, this is what we should do in the way we how do you say, we get resources from the ocean. So yeah, I think it's, the vision keeps on changing through time. So like, it's one step at a time, I would say.
Right. Thank you so much for that, MJ, for sharing your story and how you became an environment activist. Gab, what made you become an environment activist?
Yeah, it really started, I guess, with that immersion also experience when I would always be hiking with my dad. So it was my dad who would bring me to the mountains. We would be hiking in the province in Mount Makiling, in Bataan, in Mount Samat, and all these other mountains, especially in the Sierra Madre also. And like growing up, when I used to go back to these same mountains, I saw the different changes that were happening, the amount of deforestation, the land inundation that was happening around the Sierra Madre. And I realized how, how the places that I've grown up with and I love are changing so rapidly, going into college and going into the university. And I think what keeps me going as an environmental activist more than just the moment that I became an environmental activist is really, the sense of community that I get working with WWF, working with university organizations before, and Marine Biological Society, and having this, even like gaining inspiration from amazing environmental activists, scientists like Kier, MJ and Kim. All of this thing, all of these things are, you know, what keeps me motivated and inspired to keep documenting the changes that were happening. That was why I focused on photography, on storytelling as well, to really show the realities that wasn't being shown in the news, that wasn't being shown to educate to other people. And I guess if like there's a grand vision, that we wouldn't even need to answer this question of what made you environmental activist, right? Like imagine if everyone was an environmentalist in their
Right.
own sense, right? Even growing up, like not be needing to protect the environment, or like all these non-profit joining in non-profits to secure, like that's very idealistic and very optimistic, I would say. But it's really the grand vision, that everyone is an environmentalist in their own lifestyle and their way of life.
Right, definitely. Thank you so much for that, Gab. Before we end our discussion, I'd like to ask your message for young people. What can young people do to help protect the environment? Let me start with MJ.
For me, it's more on like, doing things like start small, like start in your own household. And then like there's a lot of way to help the environment, like by just doing gardening, eating less. I don't know if people are still doing it, but if you can afford to eat less fish, less meat, I think that will be good for the environment. And then I think um, each one of us has to play a role. It's not just us researchers. Each one of us, the young people, needs to do something. And then one way to go about on this as well is take opportunities in volunteering organizations. There's a lot of way online, in person. In that way, you will be more exposed of what is going on in our environment, in our country, and like issues worldwide. So yeah, just take advantage of opportunities out there.
Thank you so much, MJ. Uh, Let me ask here, what can young people do to help protect the environment?
I would say stay engaged because it's always fun and to work with fellow young people when we see the problem of biodiversity loss of or climate change. It can be overwhelming, and as a young person, uh, it's it's just very overwhelming, but when you have friends, when you have peers, when you have a network of young people who are who you share your advocacies with, then it becomes easier and fun, and learn to acknowledge that you cannot really solve the problem just by doing simple things, because it's a really big problem and it takes a long time. It's a process. And also find your voice, because there can be many like people there can be many people who who are in this fight, alongside us, and it's always good to determine your strength, to find your voice, to really know your advocacy, what you want to fight for. And when you know that, then it's just easier for you to fight for the environment, for the specific things that you want to fight for. Because again, environment and biodiversity and climate change, these are really big problems, and again, it can be overwhelming. So it's really easy if we have, again, people to share adventures with, and it's easier if we know the specifics of what we're fighting for. So
Thanks so much for that, Kier. It's easier to fight for the environment if you have allies and friends with you. How about Gab?
Yeah, I think I would always say and go to the roots of interconnectedness again. In protecting the environment, it doesn't need that you should be an environmental activist. It can be in your own passion as a photographer, as a scientist, even as like a lawyer, a banker, or a doctor. The way is about a mentality in wherein you protect the people. You care more about the benefit of the large, or the benefit of the greater good. So in that way, in like instilling that way, you don't need to throw away your career in law, right? Maybe you can
Mm,
focus on environmental law. Maybe you can
right.
focus, or protect the human rights of environmental defenders, right? So I think it's really about discovering your passion. Don't find your passion because you're gonna get lost. Discover it. Try out new things. What clicks to you? What you find that gives you fulfillment, and that makes you happy, and like really do it. Do that. Keep doing that, and in a way, it will already ripple, I believe, more and more into the communities, the different businesses, or um, people that you work with. So don't limit yourself. I think it's really about exploring, and really exploring yourself, as well as your own home and the world at large.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Gab. No, I really like what you said. Don't just look for your passion, but you because you might get lost, but discover it in also in the sense of taking care of the environment. You explore things that maybe you're doing it already, and yet just to focus more on the environment side of that thing that you're doing, be it an environmental lawyer or what have you. All right. Thank you so much. How about Kim? What can young people do to help protect the environment? Kim? Kim, can
Ayun.
you hear us? Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead. It's fine. It's fine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
clearly. You can hear it clearly.
Thank you. As a young person, then I've come to a point and I wanted to, have an answers to all, have solutions to all problems, environmental problems, that kind of complexity. Now you want to be Superman, and it can be
Right.
quite overwhelming. But all of the answers from my co-speakers really resonated with me. Just finding your own niche in this world of environmental activism and doing something within the bounds of what you know. Because a lot of, I think, young people are actually intimidated because they would think environmental movement or environment doing something for the environment would have specific skills like those like scientists or
Mm-mm.
people working for the environment in the field of environment. But actually it's really multidisciplinary. You can be good in music and use your music. You can write songs, you can write
Right.
poems, you can be so many things and have a part in environmental awareness. So for young people, I also like what Pierre said, na you have to find allies. You have to find yung mga friends or mga
Mm-mm.
kaibigan na would really encourage you, kasi we can be in a lot of groups and you would feel like we're being hindi tayo there are times na may discouragement because of what we're doing for the environment, but it's really looking for the right spaces and groups and peers that would really encourage you and stay there to be able to burn the fire that you have within you. So as a young people, you can do so many things. Even marami siyang scope and the level na nasa bahay ka, you can grow your own food, or just simply by taking part in lessening, the consumption for electricity and being more mindful with the food you eat, not wasting so much food or not wasting any resources that you have within your reach. It's already an act of activism, an act of environmental protection that we can do for the environment. So you can, take part and participate in local issues just by joining even face to face. I don't know if a lot of face to face activities are already happening, a lot of movements. But in Negros, I don't know if you've heard, but the environmental movement for youth here is quite strong. So there are really a lot of, spaces where you can join and finding the right peers that could really, develop and also help you out in your journey for the environment. So you can do so many things, and even just sharing information about the wildlife or about Philippines and how much we have these resources around us, or sharing different kinds of environmental issues that are close to your community. It's already an act of doing something for nature. So you can do so many things, and it's just really a matter of taking a step towards doing that something for nature. You just have to move for it, because there are so many inspiration around you that you can, find your who got for the environment.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Kim. But before we let you go, guys, go, no. Last message, final message to our viewers here on Chat Up in terms of taking care of our environment and being a part of the conservation of our rich biodiversity of the country. I'll start with MJ.
It's more on like sharing. I would say share whatever opportunities you see. How do you say, like in relation to environment? By just sharing those, you can already influence other people to get interested or be more. How do you say? It's not really getting interested, but you are exposing yourselves out there. Like personally, I'm not good in social media, but if you want your voice, if you want your your voice to amplify other people, you need to be out there in ways you can, and people will understand as well.
All right. Thank you so much, MJ. Kier?
Um, Again, stay engaged and be informed. Utilize the power of social media because, especially during the pandemic, we see how powerful the social media is in terms of transmitting information, in terms of getting information, like learning and
Right.
knowledge. So I guess it's our responsibility also to be informed of what biodiversity is and what are the threats it faces. No, so it's just really maximizing the power of social media. Share what you learn, share your advocacy, and always encourage people to protect the environment because again, everything is connected to everything else. Like what we do here eventually will affect other people or other places.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Kier. Kim, a final message to our viewers. Kim? Okay, I think we lost the connection to Kim. Gab, final
Yeah,
message? Go
yeah, I
ahead.
think change always starts today. So if you're not into this field yet, yeah, keep engaged. Go social media, follow environmental organizations, take on opportunities where you could immerse yourself in nature, and of course, I think remain vigilant. Keep vigilant in what you consume as well in social media, and to be truly aware about the issues that we have in biodiversity and the environment and even the climate, and invest in the community. I think that's one of the biggest things, like especially at a young age. Your community is the greatest investment that you can make in really developing this passion, this interest, and really creating change and creating an impact to the people at home, to governments, to businesses, and even yourself.
All right. Thank you so much, Gab, for that. And once again, thank you so much to our speakers for this afternoon. Thank you so much for sharing your advocacy and your insights with us today. We appreciate your time. Once again, thank you, Kier Pitogo, Gab Mejia, Casipe, and MJ Lamoste. Oh, Kim is back. Kim, any final message to our viewers for this afternoon?
In one
Kim?
way or another, they are affected by what's happening around us.
Kim?
Hello?
All right. Yeah, can you hear us? Any final message to our
Yeah.
viewers?
I'm not sure if you did you were you able to hear my
No,
ano,
you were
or
cut off.
wala
You
siya?
were cut off.
Am I on
Apologies for
mute?
that. Yeah.
So, sige, to repeat what I said, I don't know if you captured it, but it's really, social media is quite a powerful platform where you can join discussions and really have, you know, the things that you know be on a certain depth that you can relate to other people, and also even in in your own homes you can start
Mm-mm.
conversations with your family by watching news that are about the environment. You can already use it as a starting point. So whatever resources you have so many available resources online that are factual and not false information, and you can use that to start conversations with your loved ones,
Right.
even with the people that you are close. So use social media platforms like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram responsibly, sharing the right information, and make sure that you do your research first before sharing something, to make sure na we're spreading the right message to these people and not actually cause be an addition to the problems that we have around us.
All right. Thank you so much, Kim, for that. And then once again, thank you to our speakers for this afternoon, Kier Pitogo, Gab Mejia, Kim Casipe, and MJ Lamoste. Thank you so much. And uh, thank you for being environmental activists and defenders of our environment. I hope more people become engaged like you guys in taking care of our environment. Keep doing the good work that you do. Thank you so much. All right. So this afternoon, we were able to hear stories from our young environmental activists and defenders of the environment. And we've learned that there are so many problems facing conservation and biodiversity issues in our country. And there seems the various disconnect, no, in terms of the laws that we have and how to implement those laws, and the lack of manpower. And yet it seems that our youth, no, the guests that we have are still very hopeful that we can solve those problems, and they are enjoining us to be part of the solution. Use the resources that you have, use the innovation that we have, for example social media, to share more stories on how you can take care of the environment, and to be engaged and to immerse yourself in different communities for you to really get to know the environment and the people protecting our environment, for you to understand that we are a part of a web of interconnectivity, and everything is connected in this world, that everything that you do, or for now, the things that you do now will eventually affect people in different areas of the world, and it will definitely affect future generation. So now let's get to know some allies in promoting wildlife conservation in the Philippines. That's here on the Spotlight. On our spotlight this week is Forest Foundation Philippines, as they provide grants and supports project. Today on the spotlight, we introduce Forest Foundation Philippines. Is a Forest Foundation Philippines is a non-profit organization that provides grants for projects supporting the protection, conservation, and sustainable management of Philippine forests and biodiversity. Some of its areas of concern are forest protection, forest restoration, law enforcement, capacity building, sustainable livelihoods, conservation research, urban biodiversity, research and advocacy, among others. Primarily, Forest Foundation Philippines support work in the country's critical forests in Sierra Madre, Palawan, Samar and Leyte, and Bukidnon and Misamis Oriental. To learn more about grants and partnerships, visit their website. That's www.forestfoundation.ph. Now, let's see what else we can do for hashtag Real Impact. Let's find out what's next. All right, here are some opportunities and actions you may do for hashtag Real Impact. Learn about what young people want during for the national elections candidates to prioritize for sustainable development. Check out and sign on the SDG Youth Agenda for the 2022 national elections. For you to sign up, you may visit youthforce.ph .ph. Sorry, that's visit youthforceph.org/SDG Youth Agenda. Again, that's youthforceph.org/SDG Youth Agenda. It's also flashed on your screens. And on March 26th, join WWF Philippines in an exclusive Earth Hour live stream where conversations will revolve around what everyone can do to persuade our country's future leaders to prioritize nature's health for our shared future. Visit the link flash on your screen or search the event on Facebook with the title Earth Hour 2022, an event organized by the WWF Philippines. You can see it's already flashed on your screen and you can search Facebook for this event. Next up, we have the application for the 2023 to 2024 Fulbright Foreign Student Program for Filipinos. It's now open. This scholarship is offered to Filipinos to study at the graduate level or pursue a non-degree doctoral dissertation research in the US. Applications will be accepted until April 15, 2022. Visit the link flashed on your screen to apply. So that's bit.ly/2023 FFSP. All right, that's it for this episode. If you found our chat helpful, then share our live stream so more people can watch our chat. Use our hashtags, #ChatUp and #RealTalkRealImpact. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's Quarant Talk Media, and follow us on Facebook for more updates and exciting programs. You can find us on Facebook at Quarant Talk Media. We're also on Twitter with the handle at Quarant Talk Media. I'm Jermaine Halandoni de Runia. You can connect with me online on Facebook, on Twitter. It's at Jermaine J. de Runa. On Instagram, it's at Jermaine Halandoni de Runa, and on Facebook, it's at Jermaine Halandoni de Runa. So join us again next month for another Real Talk here on #ChatUp, Real Talk, Real Impact. Have a great week, everyone.